is the Flex Network. Flex on everybody.
Oh, yes, everybody. This is the Flex Network back again with another one of those block rockin' beats. He is Flex Shane. I am Flex Matt. And below us, the fantasy football god, Bob Harris. Bob, how the heck are you? I know you're running double, triple overtime. Just got off a set with Michael Fabiano on Sirius XM. Right into our show here tonight. And Bob, how are you?
I am still standing. And, anytime I can say that, it's a good day.
Bob,
how are you guys doing? A little while.
We're excited.
My God. We are so, Bob, I will tell you, I get messages every day since you've been last on our radio program is, when is Bob Harris coming back on the Flex Network? Well, here you are, Bob, and let's get right into it. Bob, I really want to know, okay, Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, is there a way this year? Now we need to start transitioning. Okay, we need to start getting into redraft. We need to start prepping our fantasy teams to take down the championship this year. Is there a way that Zach Wilson or Mac Jones outscores the other top three QBs, especially not Lawrence, of course, but maybe Trey Lance, maybe Justin Fields? Tell me, Bob.
It is possible. I mean, it's possible for Zach Wilson, right? I mean, I know it's a horrible team, historically speaking, and they haven't done well in selecting quarterbacks. They're doing things differently now. This is a Joe Douglas team. Took him a little time to get the pieces he wanted in place, So if you're looking the last couple of years saying, well, Joe Douglas hasn't done a damn thing. Well, he was saddled with a coach he didn't want, who he is now shed of, a quarterback he's shed of, and he has his new quarterback. And the thing that I like that they're doing differently is, building around Zach Wilson, it seems, the addition of offensive guard in this draft with the high-end draft capital goes Mekhi Beckham. Elijah Tucker is in there now. So Vera Tucker. So I like the way that's looking. I like the explosive threats that they added on offense, and Elijah Moore and Michael Carter. So they're doing things differently. It doesn't guarantee success, right? It needs to come along. But just the fact that they seem to be putting in more of an effort than we've seen in recent years. And we all know what the Shanahan offense can do for an offense, right? So just for the skill players from a fantasy perspective. So I have some hopes for him. The issues for the other guys, I think Justin Fields will be starting very early. I know Matt Nagy came out and said today it won't be week one. I kind of get that. It's against the Rams. It's a tough test to open your career, but I also kind of don't get it, This is not the same situation that Matt Nagy was in when he was in Kansas City as an assistant, where they let Patrick Mahomes sit behind a playoff quarterback at the time, and Alex Smith. This is not that. I don't know that Andy Dalton is a playoff quarterback. He is, although already the winningest quarterback in Chicago's Bears franchise history.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Bears
fans. Oh, no, Bears fans. Oh, no.
But, I think Justin Fields should be playing soon. I think he has a lot of upside as well. Trey Lance is the trickier one for me. I, loved where he's gone. I don't think they traded up just to sit around and play fiddlesticks. I mean, I think they're not going to be afraid to let him move in. But also, they have a really good team already, and Jimmy Garoppolo has led them successfully in the past. And if all the pieces stay fit and healthy and Garoppolo plays up to his full potential and doesn't overthrow somebody in the Super Bowl, this will all be really good. It could mean that Trey Lance has a year to sit and maybe, follow the Patrick Mahomes footsteps. So that seems like a possible, within the range of possible outcomes there is Lance sitting. So, I do think Zach Wilson has a chance. Mac Jones, I don't think so, because I think Cam Newton looks like I don't want to say rebound.
Bob. Well, you guys were talking about it on your show today that, Billy Boy, as you can tell, I'm clearly a Patriots fan here, is already saying that Cam Newton is way ahead of where he was last year. Well, maybe that's because he wasn't on the team this time last year. Yeah, plus it's a pretty low bar.
It's a low bar, but it's, you look at what he was for that offense. He was that offense. Over 40% of the touchdowns he had a hand in, whether passing or running. That's the highest, percentage in the league. Kyler Murray was second at 24%, I believe, 24%. So there, and look, I mean, I look at some of the quarterbacks in the league, like Tua Tagovailoa. I think, there's a guy that, there's reasons maybe he got off to a bad start, just like there's reasons Cam Newton got off to a blistering fast start and then hit the COVID speed bump. So, I mean, there's a lot of nuance here. I think Mac Jones is a guy who's going to sit around a little while. Look, Cam Newton has not, been a paragon of health, in recent years. So, there's room for anything to happen. But I think ideally for the Patriots, Cam Newton will be their starter this year. And remember, they had a lot of guys opt out to the COVID. You probably know this, Shane.
Yes.
And
most starters.
This could be a lot better team this year in general. So that could be, that could play into this situation as well.
All right, Bob. Hold on, Shane. So
I got one question.
Hold on. Every time I ask this question, Bob, I want to gear the questions definitely towards redraft. But in the end, I do want to ask you, who would you take in Dynasty, though? If you're at 1.02 and Trevor's already gone, and it's Bob Harris's Dynasty team, who are you selecting?
Kyle Pitts. No. Everybody loves a smart ass, right? So
QB respectively.
I'm probably leaning Justin Fields. But the coaching situation has me also interested in Trey Lance. So it would be in those two are right neck and neck for me right now.
I like that. No, I just wanted to talk about Elijah Moore as it pertains to Zach Wilson. I mean, there's a lot of hyperbole right now that some of these beat writers are saying is the best Jets rookie wide receiver they've ever seen in camp. I think everybody, I can't just say everybody was pretty high on Elijah Moore and just his talent coming into the NFL draft. He goes and he gets early round 2 draft capital. I mean, our buddy Sapper Stud's saying it's already to the moon. First of all, were you high on Elijah Moore? And second of all, do you think that he's the kind of talent that could elevate a guy like Zach Wilson? And maybe, they get that relationship early and, like Sapper says, to the moon.
Yes, on all counts, whether it's this year, maybe we're pushing our luck a little bit. I would have liked it a lot better if Jamison Crowder hadn't got a new deal that keeps him around. That said, they could still trade Jamison Crowder, right? I mean, they're just got him at a cap friendlier number now. We don't know what that number is. We know it's probably not 10 million though anymore. But I felt like that was kind of. It seems like they have a number of pieces that fit that same mold, right? Whether it's Crowder, Braxton Berrios, and Elijah Moore. I think Elijah Moore looks like a guy who I'm keen on. Love him in Dynasty. Not sure what I feel about this year. I feel the same about Michael Carter though, that he's a playmaking threat. That's the thing that I think the Jets are doing, is adding some really explosive playmakers to this. I mean, Carter, in addition to a pair of 1,000-yard seasons, by the way, rushing alongside Javonte Williams, sharing, he had like last year over 23 plays at 20 yards or more. I mean, these are the kind of playmakers you need. And in this offense, I think it'll come in handy. So I do think they're putting the pieces around him. And Elijah Moore is certainly one that I'm really keen on in Dynasty.
I love it. We're going to take a bit of a pivot here, Bob. We never get to talk about football diehards. We never get to talk about your products. You're very, I don't know, you don't talk about it enough on the show. So so you've got your 3 products. You've got the draft book, the cheat sheets, and then the pro forecast.
We also have the Diehards, football diehards magazine too. We've got a whole bunch of them.
So this was last year's. I had the pro forecast. I love this product just because of what's in it. I just want to talk about it for a second. So of course it's got just some general overall cheat sheets and whatnot. But what I really love is you got the various experts. Like I'm just looking here, Gary Davenport, Jamie Eisenberg, Liz Loza, all these experts that participate in the magazine. Then you actually have just overall team reviews. So now this is detailed team breakdowns, and you guys grade where you feel from a fantasy perspective. So first of all, I know you guys had your tight deadlines. One, when is this going to be released? And 2, can you tell the people a little bit about the magazines that you guys produce? Because it's all good stuff.
Right. So the pro forecast, this will be the 32nd straight year of publication for that. We actually do a couple of those. We do an update. So we finished the first one last week. It'll be out on newsstands. And then we do an update here at the first week of July. That'll be out, a little bit later, kind of a second round to cover any things. We often get, there's things you'll miss. And one of the things about magazines that I think, I've been doing this a long time. I've heard what you're saying, people. They're outdated as soon as they come off. Well, we go to great lengths to try to keep them evergreen, especially the articles, the strategy articles. They kind of more focus on in-depth strategies and approaches as opposed to player specific. But some of it, you do get into player specific things. So you get free code, you get codes that give you free access to the website right up into the season. So You get updated rankings. So whatever rankings you're seeing in the magazine will be updated. But those that we're really big on the idea of diversity of opinion, right? Want to get all these experienced professionals in there who've been doing this to, so we're not just, giving you the company line, we're giving you everybody's line. And that's something we do throughout all the magazines. The Cheat Sheets magazine in particular, we really let the participants in that roam pretty far afield and get all their licks in. And we ask them to give us a lot of bold predictions, sleepers, busts, breakout players, comeback players, all those things. And we do that in all the magazines, but Cheat Sheets, we really focus on that. You get mock drafts and all those where the people explain their strategies. So there's plenty of stuff, to dig through, stats, things like that. Look, people still like to sit on the beach and read something, and it's hard to read your iPad in the sun, or it gets hot and melts or whatever. Or you're on a plane and you didn't hook up to the Wi-Fi, whatever. They're still used for magazines. When I got into this, in the mid 90s, Emo Catholic had been doing it a few years already. And I kind of felt like, wow, this is a kind of a sunset industry. We're going to have to look at ways to move forward. I really wanted to incorporate the web, and we did. But the funny thing is the magazines just aren't fading. People still like to have that product in their hands. So we deliver it. Got four different titles and a little something different in each one of them. So be sure to check them out. And if you're interested, you can get them on our website, footballdiehards.com. Order them there, or they're on newsstands at like about 30,000 stores across the lands and in Canada.
Ooh,
that's where I am, baby.
That's where Shane
I got
is.
you covered, man. I got you covered, Shane.
Yeah, Shane can't go anywhere in Canada, so he'll definitely get. Here's the thing about print material, Bob. I mean, print material in my eyes is the same thing as drafting with a group of friends. It seems like everybody's drafting online. Everybody's looking for information online. But generally, when you're out there looking for information, I can tell you one thing: I really hate paying for information online. I just hate it. It's like, okay, you scroll down to 5 or 4 people's thing. It's like, okay, but from here on, you got to give us $7. I would prefer to go grab the magazine from the newsstand, read it on my time whenever I grab it, and on my time's obviously on the toilet. Just joking. It's on. It's at my draft, and then I look at everybody else's magazines. They got printouts. They got half printouts from the online interwebs, and I'm just destroying these guys, Bob Harris. So thank you for that. But let's talk about Pitts. Okay. Obviously, he's the greatest tight end that's ever lived, this guy. He just got drafted. He's already the greatest tight end. Same thing with Jamar Chase, okay? Are we a little too high on Pitts and Chase coming into the year this year, knowing that they are in offenses that probably are going to be tough to feature them with everybody else that's around there? Bob, are we too high on these guys, or should we buy in at ADP over some of these other guys?
Of course, we're too high on them. It's, it's the emotional response. It's the immediate, the lure gets thrown in the water and all us fish start swimming that way. And as fantasy managers, we tend to be a little like that. And look, I mean, I think I always talk about this, divorcing the emotion from your process as you're preparing for in fantasy football. And one of the things is, part of that is the excitement and enthusiasm. And we look at Jamar Chase, and we saw what Justin Jefferson did last year with a quarterback. He didn't have that kind of connection that Jamar Chase has with Joe Burrow. And we saw Joe Burrow throwing the ball 40 times a game in the 10 games he was healthy. There's a lot to like there. And I'm not against drafting, in particular Chase, where he's going. I'm not against Pitts. Look, Julio Jones moves on. This is not the norm. Rookie receivers finishing in the top 10 from a fantasy perspective does not happen very much. And wide receivers finishing in the top 10 has not happened very much, right? So, I mean, you have to keep it in that context and not overpay. So I like Pitts fine as is kind of a speculative play, even in redraft, and maybe draft him a little earlier than I normally would a rookie tight end, just because of the circumstance, just because of the investment the Falcons made in him. And Arthur Smith, the former tight end coach of the Tennessee Titans, who went on to become a coordinator of some renown with that same organization, comes to the Falcons. I think he'll use him in creative ways. And that's the thing about Kyle Pitts. I don't think you're going to see him playing as a traditional tight end would play. You're going to see some innovative usage with him. And Hayden Hurst is still there to be the inline blocker and do some of those things. So I'm not going to be surprised if I see Kyle Pitts taking handoffs out of the backfield, right? I mean, it's just, you're going to see some interesting things. So drafting him on the possibility that he is everything everyone, and by everyone, I mean, who hasn't said it, a generational talent, and a unique, a unicorn at the position, right? So, investing in him, if I'm getting him in that, the price is rising, right? But, getting him in that 6th, 7th, 8th round range, and then backing him up with maybe a guy who has a little bit of upside or has shown something in the past, Evan Ingram going much later, Irv Smith going later, plenty of guys who I feel like I can hang my hat on. I'm kind of a Troutman guy as well, who I can get with like the last pick in a lot of drafts. Not best balls anymore, but a fair number of drafts, redrafts anyway.
The fish missile.
Fire the fish missile, kids.
Oh,
the dismissal, his time is over. I still talk to like Sean Dugar from The Athletic is a huge Disley guy like I am. And a huge Chris Carson guy too, like I am.
That's funny you say Sean Dugar. Yes, 100%. I know of him locally here in the Seattle scene, of course, but that's what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to push the smash button for Gerald Everett this year, who I think is just in a much better position. And you saw how well David Moore really played in that third wide receiver role. Really, it's called the third option in any Russell Wilson offense, which I think is going to end up being Gerald Everett. If you look in all the primetime games, especially last year, and I know I'm homering out right here, Bob, but I mean about 7 passes are thrown to the tight end, and it could be a wheel of fortune of who's getting those. And I remember last year, it seemed like a couple just doinked right off the hands, where it's just, man, you just start adding up these counting stats for Gerald Everett this year, and he's going way too low. Shane, sorry, get me out of this. I can't.
So just on him, I mean, Shane Waldron coming over as the offensive coordinator, familiar with what Gerald Everett could do.
Yes.
But I think you think back to the investment that Sean McVay made and the Rams made in Everett. One of the things you have to, go back in the history there and see what Sean McVay saw working alongside Jordan Reed during his time in Washington when he was a huge component. And I think they were looking to replicate that kind of skill set. And, I'm not saying that he's going to turn into Jordan Reed because we don't know, but certainly that's what they thought he was at one point in Los Angeles. So maybe they can figure something out there. So I have now firing the fish missile instead of the dismissal for that very reason.
No, I love it. I mean, so the thing is, people forget that it was Everett that was really breaking out before Tyler Higbee had that, what was that, historic 4 or 5 game run.
Yeah. It was 5 games.
Yeah. So that's pretty impressive. I'm still, to be honest, in terms of Jamar Chase, I love the guy as a talent, but, and again, you guys were chatting on the show today. I mean, are we really going to be drafting all 3 Bengals wide receivers before players like Cortland Sutton? And I get, there's a bit of that injury discount. The problem with a guy like Jamar Chase versus a Justin Jefferson, I don't think it's a fair comparison to expect Jamar Chase to come out and just produce the same as Jefferson. I mean, Jefferson kind of walked into the absolute perfect situation. He was the de facto wide receiver 2. He had a guy like Adam Thielen, a vet that could draw away corners coverage, can play in the slot, and he had a hyper efficient quarterback in Kirk Cousins. So to me, I don't think it's fair to compare when there's valid players like Tyler Boyd, like T. Higgins, who we absolutely love, and think that he's just not going to go away. So it's all about the opportunity. And while I do believe Jamar Chase is a superior wide receiver overall, and that's bold to say maybe, but I just don't think it's fair because there's only one ball to go around, as they say.
Right. In Minnesota, it's more of a funnel, right? It's going through a much narrower band of hands. And, so I get that. I mean, expecting all 3 of those Cincinnati wide receivers to get 100+ targets is not like a total reach, though. I don't think so.
40 pass attempts a game, maybe.
Right. Well, and even if they dial that back, so I'm expecting those guys to do that 100+ is not unreasonable. And you're not going to see a lot of CJ Uzomah or Drew Sample aren't going to be big factors in there. And so, I mean, I could see this being a bit of a funnel. It's just more guys that it's funneling through, but it's still going to be that band of guys. So I think, and we talked about this on the show today too. I was asking Ben Baby of ESPN about this. Is it reasonable to say, okay, if you're in a PP, some of this is always about roster construction, right? So maybe you, especially in best balls, you're going with some huge big play threats early on, and you need that steady guy that you think is really going to, really get the targets and make the most of him. Maybe you wait a little bit and get Tyler Boyd, right, as a slot guy. I think that seems reasonable. If you want kind of a bigger play threat, you already have that solid high catch total guy, high catch percentage guy. Maybe you go with T. Higgins as a big play threat. And if you want to thread the needle down the middle, you go Jamar Chase. And so, Ben didn't think that was a crazy approach. It seems reasonable, but something you mentioned, in the Court and Sutherland, I think right now I looked at the best ball 10 ADP for the last 2 weeks, and Sutherland is going after all three of those guys, and I thought it was a little odd. He's going like mid-8th or late 7th, mid-8th round, somewhere in that range, and just behind Boyd. So, I'm kind of big on Sutton, and I'm kind of big though in general on taking wide receiver ones who are going way late. Even if it's Corey Davis, who I don't know if I have high expectations for him, but where I'm drafting him, he's probably still a wide receiver one for the Jets. So I'm willing to pay. So I'm kind of looking for guys like that down the line.
Well, usually, Bob, you want to stay away from guys coming off of injury, but that's mainly because those guys coming off of injury are being drafted in the 5th round, where you have to choose between ADP and injury and all that. But Cortland Sutton going in the 7th or 8th round is not, you got to smash it. Yes, on that every time. He come right back, and it doesn't really cost you a lot of draft capital.
Right. I think it's, multiple levels of question coming off the injury, the quarterback situation. Talking to Ryan O'Halloran from the Denver Post on the Football Diehards show last Saturday, couple weeks ago Saturday, he said the same thing pretty consistently throughout, but he just reminded us all that Cortland Sutton was by far the best player on the field in training camp last year for that team. And whatever you think of Drew Lock, they did show some bit of chemistry at some point. So I'm okay with it. I think the quarterback play will probably be better this year, whoever's starting, and there you go. As I think that's what you're looking for. Like, right, Sutton is your wide receiver 3. I did a draft last night where he is that. I'm really high on Brandon Ayuk, a guy who I'm jumping ADP to take based on his finish last year with less than stellar quarterback play. So if I take that chance on him a little early and then I end up with Sutton as my next, as my wide receiver 3 in that case, I'm feeling pretty pleased with myself.
I love that. You were chatting about, or you mentioned before, your cohort, the founder of Football Diehards, Emil Kadlik, was inducted into the FSGA Hall of Fame just this weekend. And you had, I would say, the honor of doing the introduction speech to introduce him before he did his speech. I think that's amazing. I would say Matt and I, we're still fanalists, right? Like, we do this as a passion, but we still have our full-time jobs, but we see where the industry's come since we've been playing fantasy football. And I love that the industry itself is recognizing really the founders. Cause if Emil, if you yourself, if you guys weren't around, frankly, we probably wouldn't be here either. And I just want to get your thoughts. Bob, you've been doing this for 3 decades or so. How have you seen the evolution in, say, that the first 30 years or so that you were involved in this versus really the last 5 years, where, at least for me, it feels like it's really ramped up in the last 5 years?
I think that there's been points where it's really made big leaps. I think 96, 97, when the NFL, kind of got a little bit, the internet boom and the NFL getting on the internet and kind of realizing what was going on. That kind of, they kind of went from being like, we don't want anything to do with this because it looks like gambling to us, to like, oh, wow, look at these people watch every game till the last damn second. So, money. Kind of thing. Right. And so there was kind of a period of growth then. And I think you're right. In recent years, there's been huge growth. There was a big leap in time when the commissioner softwares started, really coming out and being effective enough that people could use them on a wide scale. And that started allowing people who didn't know each other to get in draft rooms and just, start playing. I think that was a big development as well. I think, the history, one of the reasons I think Emil, has always impressed me is he loves that part of this industry, looking back. And if you go to fantasynation.com, he has a series of videos with what we consider the pioneers of fantasy sports, just people who have, kind of been game changers in that. He's done about 30 of them. He's looking to do another 30 or so, I think, in the future. So that's kind of interesting. But he also, one of the things we did was we went back and looked up the roots of the game, the first documented league, essentially the GOPL, the Greater Oakland Pigskin Prognosticators League, which was basically started by a guy named Bill Winkenbaugh in like 1961, 62.
Wow.
And it was kind of centered on the Oakland Raiders at the time. You either had to be in the media and cover that team, or be part owner of that team, or have some connection to that team. And really fascinating the way it started and kind of how it's gone, and talked to a lot of those guys who were involved with that. Emil and I both did, and have all the documentation, got all their original paperwork from their first drafts. And that's something that Emil's really been a big part of. And he's been kind of a game changer in the business, right? I mean, not just the magazines, but also, the first high stakes contest.
Best ball.
The first best ball he made. The first documented best ball draft, Emil Cadlick was the catalyst for. We used to run some leagues, FanX, the fantasy experts, we called them leagues, with all the guys, many of them now. But they started a second league and didn't want to manage it. So Emil came up with the best ball idea. So he started the Fantasy Sports Writing Association, co-founded it. I was also a co-founder of that. And both of us went on to be inducted in the Hall of Fame of that. But I think the trade association is a bigger deal. And it's something that you should have probably already been in, but I'm glad they got him in there now.
Well, I would say for those who have SiriusXM accounts, you can go into the app and you can just search FSGA. You could probably search Emil Cadlick, and you will see his speech. And I would highly recommend it. Anybody who's a fan of the game to just go back and listen to it, because it's really an appreciation. And I think what's cool is that you learn more about these people that we look up to, right? I mean, just learn, what was he like? He has all these degrees, and it's just crazy, right? And then it's like, I'm just going to do fantasy football instead.
I think one of the things, not just about this industry, but about the hobby itself, is, I mean, we are, as people, we share a lot of characteristics, and kind of see a lot of things the same way, and kind of approach a lot of things the same way. And I think that's fun. The connection you make with people who see the same exact thing you do in this game that's a make-believe game based on a real game. And it's something that we've always paid attention to over the course of time. Talked about it, I think, a story at the original World Championship of Fantasy Football. We're in Vegas at the hotel where the contest is being held. And all these people paid a lot of money to be there, to travel there, to be part of this initial huge high stakes event. And there was a guy in line at the business center, had one of our magazines rolled up in his hand, and he has no idea who we are. And I said, hey, use those magazine rankings? Oh, hell no, I'm smarter than these guys. And
honestly, did you have your pictures in the front like you did here?
We didn't have the pictures then. But honestly, when he said that, what struck me was he's right, and that's something like, as we're out there on Twitter, out there on Sirius, doing these podcasts, all these things, there is a world of people out there who we're talking to who are 100% sure they could be doing the same thing we're doing every bit as good as we're doing it. And they're not wrong, right? It's just, it's what's your level of commitment to this? What is your, it's just, there are maybe just some quirks of fate that have kept them from doing this. But the audience, I always make the same corny line is, people say I'm a fantasy expert. I go, no, I'm not a fantasy expert. But my job is to make you a fantasy expert. Because I think everyone out there, I think everyone out there who plays the game to some degree is an expert, because they're playing, and you don't just, kind of half-ass it in this. Once you're into it, you go, oh my God, look at this. And I think that's something we all share, that connection we all share as fantasy players.
That connection is just us being complete fantasy freaks, Bob Harris. That's all of us. And the game of football has completely become, like, I have, my grandmother likes to play, fantasy. She has no idea what's going on, but she loves to track the players, the stats. I remember growing up with my grandmother. She always liked to tell me about the Mariners and how the Ichiro's batting average. And it's like people kind of grow accustomed to that. Fantasy sports allows you to kind of understand the game a little bit better. And then you got your grandmother on Thanksgiving hoping that Des Bryant scores a touchdown so that she could so she can wad that magazine that I bought and whap me over the head with it.
Right.
What I mean?
And, it's that connection to a sport you already love that brings you closer to it and makes you feel that direct connection to the players, to your team. And I think that's something that the players, as I've talked to them over the years, and they kind of gained an understanding of this. That's something that they came to appreciate too, which is, look, they're in these uniforms wearing helmets. They're essentially laundry. People are rooting for laundry. Fantasy sports is what makes people root for them as individuals, as people, as players. And I mean, I get it. There's a lot of like, wow, I don't really care about your fantasy team thing, but there's a lot of players who really get it. And I think one of the first guys that really, drove that home, Larry Johnson, used to play for the Chiefs, talked to me, said, man, fantasy is what makes, a Chicago Bear fan, a Larry Johnson fan, a Philadelphia Eagle fan, a Larry Johnson fan. And he was right. And I think a lot of players are, have over time got it. They didn't all get it at first. And I understand that as well. And, and when we're out there adding them on Twitter after a lousy game, it kind of, they don't necessarily understand why, but those who play fantasy understand why.
Oh man, that's probably my favorite thing is when the players get upset that they get so much. DeAndre Hopkins gets so slayed on the 2 catches for 15 yards. I hate fantasy. I hate your team. Your team doesn't matter to me at all, but it seems like that's all the grief they get. There's a lot of people in my town that don't like to play because they prefer to root for their team.
Yeah.
It's like blasphemy. If you root for anybody on the Patriots team, God forbid it's Tom Brady or now he's on the Bucs. Nope, not watching it.
Here's the thing with a team like the Patriots. To be honest, you kind of have to split. Like it's how do you say? I don't draft Patriots players typically. I typically avoid them because they're just going to break my heart in fantasy football. I'm not, maybe I'll go like a Damian Harris late this year, but for the most part, it's kind of like hands off. And I've done that for a number of years, not intentionally, but I'll never reach. Like you have these homers that will reach for players on the teams, but it's like I would rather not. It's the only thing that sucks is when you're watching your Patriots and the guy you're playing against that week has a Patriots player like Tom Brady and he just puts up 5 touchdowns and you just It's
I think that's the biggest complaint. Is rooting against guys, rooting for players, going against your team. I think that's kind of changed over the years as well. Mm-hmm. People have come to grips with that notion. But there's always going to be the traditional fans that still struggle with that a little bit. But once they play fantasy, they kind of get why.
All right, Bob, I'm sorry. I feel like we take up your time, but it's like, geez, you're like an encyclopedia. I mean, you just go. I mean, you know what I mean? Geez. Okay, so here we go. Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith, okay? To me, very similar guys. Although Devontae Smith he weighs as much as like your child does.
Weighs more than Tutu Atwell, though, so he's got that going for him.
That's true. So here's the thing. To me, they're very similar guys, okay? Obviously, for this year, I'd like to ask you, who are you? Do you happen to be high on one or the other? And then I'd like you to tell me if you're sitting at 1.06, 1.07, which seems to be where Waddle is being drafted. He's being drafted about 3, 4, 5, 6, depending on where you're at, a little over Smith. But does Bob Harris choose Smith over Waddle at all? And in Dynasty specifically?
In Dynasty, it's probably going to be a 50-50 proposition. And, Smith probably my first choice, a slight lean there.
Okay.
Because, still, even in Dynasty, clear path to workload matters. And it's clearer in Philadelphia. I mean, there's just not a lot there to get in the way, stand in the way. Even in redraft, I think, if you're just dead set on drafting a rookie receiver, not named Jamar Chase, then you can kind of say, wow, Devontae Smith is in a pretty good spot, assuming, Jalen Hurts picks up the pace a little bit on his completions. I think it's interesting that we're seeing a lot of players go to teams where they have connections with the quarterback. I like that. I think that works in everybody's favor, including Waddle's. I just think the presence of Will Fuller, at least for this year, is going to be a bit of an obstacle, but at some point Will Fuller will not be there, and it could be this year as well. So, maybe his connection to Tua will help. We'll carry him as well. People are very high on him. I'm going to lean Smith in, pretty much all cases, but it's only a slight lean. I mean, we're splitting hairs here.
Okay. So now this is pure Dynasty. Okay. Now we're going to look at the next tier. Now I really want to, obviously Elijah Moore, Rashad Bateman, but what I would really like to know is why not Kadarius Toney? I mean, in Dynasty, the guy's a first-round pick, but he's being drafted way over Terrace Marshall, Rondale Moore, Elijah Moore, Rashad Bateman. Why not Kadarius Toney, or does Bob Harris think that there's something there?
I think the biggest problem for him is we don't really understand what the usage is going to be, right? I mean, they bring in Kenny Golladay, Saquon Barkley is there. They have some pretty good veteran receivers on board already. I think Toney can be very good. Obviously, the Giants think he can as well, given the draft capital they expended on him. So, I'd like to see that offense progress a little bit. I think, in Dynasty, I don't think that's big a deal. I don't see him going in many redrafts or best balls. Probably for all the reasons I stated. Nobody really knows what the role is. Am I going to keeping an eye on him for waiver wire fodder if he turns out to be that kind of playmaking threat they drafted him to be right out the gate? Sure. And I mean, we all know kind of, what he does. I mean, the ball in his hands, once the ball's in his hands, anything can pretty much happen. So you love those kind of playmakers. I just, until I have a better understanding of what the role and the plan is for him, Jason Garrett is not like the most creative offensive mind in the NFL. I'll kindly suggest, serviceable. And, I'm not trying to, be dismissive of what he does, but, I don't see tons of creative use of different kinds of pieces. Right. So if I start seeing signs of that, I'm going to be, very interested. But until I do, I'm not going to invest a lot of draft capital, certainly not redraft capital, maybe some dynasty capital.
Okay, so I was faced with this in my dynasty league, but Amon-Ra St. Brown in the 4th round drafted this year, or Kadarius Toney drafted in the 1st round, but we're in dynasty, late 2nd round, Bob Harris. Do you still pass on Kadarius Toney?
No, I'd probably draft the talent there. I mean, I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to be really good. I think he might be, a significant contributor this year, right? They don't have a lot of weapons there. He kind of fills a void there in the slot. So, I'm not against drafting him this year really late in drafts. I think he fits in with that team. I think he is a kneecap biter along the lines of Dan Campbell's greatest desire. So there's something to be said for him. But in the end, I'm going to, in Dynasty, I'm going to draft the talent and hope it develops.
Okay, Bob, we got about 2 more left. One's rapid fire, but Shane, go ahead. This is probably the most important one. We've laid off the running back conversation, but I mean, it's a pretty hefty one, Shane. Go ahead.
Really, there's 3, right? I actually no. I'm going to say in early redraft this year, you're really probably targeting 3 guys, and then there's going to be those other 2 guys that are going to be later. So, of course, we're talking about Javonte Williams, Travis Etienne, and Najee Harris.
Come slap you.
I know exactly. You got to be careful. So Harris is going, your namesake is going almost at the 1-2 turn at this point in drafts. Travis Etienne is falling, man. He's fallen to I've gotten him in the 4th and 5th round of some of my best balls. And then Javonte, just with the whole Melvin Gordon thing, people are still uncertain. I've heard rumblings that Javonte could be the starter in week 1.
Yeah, Ryan O'Halloran will tell you that from the Denver Post. I know he said it again this past weekend, but he told me and Mike Dempsey this like 3 weeks ago. He just said, look, they moved up to get him. As long as he doesn't have problems learning the offense, he's going to be the week 1 starter. That's O'Halloran's opinion. And it wouldn't shock me, right? I mean, they may be ready to move on from Melvin Gordon. Start making that transition now. So wouldn't shock me, but one of these things is not like the others. And one of them has an immediate clear path to workload. And that's Harris. And that's why we're drafting him. Even though it's maybe not the ideal offensive line. Even today, Matt Canada, the new offensive coordinator, was talking about how everybody from ownership down wants to run the ball. And so, I'm on board with this. In redraft, like last night, I did a draft where I got him in the middle of the 2nd round, got Jonathan Taylor at 6, came back around and got Najee Harris. I was quite thrilled. But that's the thing, you're looking at the situation in the history, and, Mike Tomlin is known to love that one feature back. Jake Seeley reminded me this past weekend. He talked to Tomlin at one point recently, and Tomlin had no problem saying it right out loud. Yeah, I'm a feature back guy. I like that. And, that dates back all the way back to Willie Parker. So, when he first started, and it's been pretty consistent throughout. So if he has that guy, that's what he wants to do. So I expect Najee Harris to be that guy, and he has the skill set to do it. good receiver as well. So I'm excited for him. Travis Etienne's problem is the clouded workload, right? We just don't know. And they're working a little bit of wide receiver. Okay, that's great. I'd rather see him as on the field 3 downs. And, it hurts the other guy who's there, and they both kind of diminish each other by their presence. So that's not a great thing. So I probably like Javonte Williams a little more. And I think, Etienne's been falling. For a while there, I was getting Williams cheaper, was coming at a better price. I don't think that's the case anymore than Etienne. So, maybe I'll start getting a little more Etienne because it's cheaper. And Trey Sermon shouldn't be ignored either. Because funny things happen in San Francisco, and he's a really good fit for that offense. Probably the best back there
ever. Yes. Well, I mean, imagine San Francisco, again, we know Denver's got a QB problem. So why don't you just go ahead and give the ball to your workhorse running back early? Here we go. This is it for me, Bob. We're probably going to end on this. Sorry, we've got a couple questions, but rapid fire. I know that, we're all looking for that second year breakout. We've had a lot of wide receivers drafted in the second round last year, and none of them or even in the first round in dynasty drafts last year, but none of them really panned out. I would say, who are you looking forward to in redraft? Who is a Bob Harris guy that's going to turn around and actually show out this year? Is it Brian Edwards, Rager, Ruggs, Michael Pittman, Denzel Mims, or is there somebody else? Judy, I guess you could say. Who else?
It's probably Pittman for me. I think it's a good spot. I think Carson Wentz is in a rebound position. Apparently, he doesn't like the competition. He doesn't have any now. And he's with a coach who led him to great heights, or at least the offensive coach. Frank Reich, when they were together in Philadelphia, was some of the best play we saw out of Wentz. So I'm expecting Michael Pittman, who had some really good moments, last year and came up, got past a really bad injury. Those compartment fractures or syndrome is really bad, very painful. And I think there's some good pieces around him. So I like him. Sounds like Mims is struggling a little bit, to get on the field and in the OTAs and minicamp practices right now. So something to keep an eye on. I think Ruggs has a lot of potential, but I mean, he's never going to be the most heavily targeted receiver in that offense because Darren Waller's there. And I think I don't think that the target shares are going to change substantially. Ruggs is going to get a ton more this year, right? But I mean, in terms of just in general, the tight end is going to be the leader of that receiving core, it looks like to me, as long as Darren Waller and John Gruden are there. So I like him okay. Rager, I think, got miscast in his first season, and maybe it helps him not to be the guy they wanted him to be last year. But until I see Jalen Hurts start completing more than 52% of his passes, I'll probably, dial back there as well. So I liked Brian Edwards. I got to say, I mean, coming in and, the reports from training camp last year, but I don't know, the ship may have sailed on him as well.
Well, he's more of a prototype alpha guy, but I mean, it's tough. It's really tough in that offense when your alpha is being fed the ball across the middle and you're just on the outside. And obviously Gruden seems to want to play fantasy football himself. A late round rookie flyer, someone in the third round or beyond in your dynasty drafts that Bob Harris loves and has to have.
I don't know that I love and have to have any of them, but you'll see me drafting. Well, maybe it changes with Julio. I was drafting Des Fitzpatrick. Josh Palmer is another guy. We don't know what Mike Williams' future is with the Chargers. Speaking of the Chargers, Larry Roundtree. I mean, if I gambled on Joshua Kelly last year, why not on Roundtree this year's new coaching staff? Still have some Kelly shares, hoping they come through. If they don't, I'm not going to worry. I think if you're talking flyers, a non-flyer. I think Ramondre Stevenson is a non-flyer. He's in a backfield that's always been cloudy and hard to figure out. But he seems like a Patriots kind of back, big physical guy. The guys that we've seen in the past, gets something done. The problem for him is Damian Harrison looked like that last year. So if Harris keeps playing well, we won't see much of him. But I do like him. But if you're doing some dart tosses, I mean, Javian Hawkins, I mean, there's not a lot of guys ahead of him.
Right.
So I mean, last round kind of guy in best balls or whatever, when you're just kind of dart tossing, and like Chuba Hubbard, obviously the value there is if you're a McCaffrey investor, I think he'll move into the head of that line. So there are plenty of guys. I'm not too many at tight end that I'm interested in, but a ton of wide receivers that, like, if I end up with them, especially in dynasty, I'm okay to see how they develop and come along. And I think, Palmer, and it was Fitzpatrick kind of at the top of that, but not as much now.
Favorite dynasty tight end stash, not named Troutman.
Dan Arnold.
No, yes. Okay, and then what do you think about Kellen Mond? I'm just hitting you this out of nowhere, but I think if anybody can Dak Prescott a team, it's Kellen Mond this year.
He has some work to do, and he'll have some time to do it. It's going to be, it's going to be Kirk Cousins for I think it's another 2 years. I think the contract kind of demands certainly this year. So, but look, I think they've invested some draft capital in him, so I don't think it's something that should be totally overlooked. Maybe Davis Mills, though, is the guy you want to see.
Ooh, okay, Shane. Bob, thank you. I'm signing off for tonight. My questions are gone. You have been amazing. And what I wanted to just have a side comment on is, what's really crazy about the fantasy industry is that, you would think that you would see after year after year after year, you, Mike Clay, all these names that everybody know, they're household names, but they're not going away. And there's always new guys. There's always everybody. It's oversaturated market. We're a part of that oversaturated market, but I think we don't intend to call ourselves fantasy analysts per se. I mean, I have no business trying to do what you do, but I like to prop up what you do because I think you're one of the best. But, I think the reason is you guys, it really goes without saying how much work you guys put in. Like you said, it's how much dedication you have in the industry, not how necessarily good you are. You're fantastic. Your dedication is unmatched. You're just a consummate professional, and it just seems like everybody at the top that swims with you, all these sharks, I mean, they're not going away. You guys are still the best. There's no one that can compete with you. I will name me all your son's favorite fantasy analysts, and I'll put Bob Harris up to him, and you will just crush them, Bob.
I'll say this, the guys coming up, and I don't think you should be so dismissive of what you guys do as well, but there's just so many smart people that are jumping into this. And I mean, people that really are forward thinking and have some really great ideas that I would never come up with. And I mean, I think, I don't want it to be a pun, but I've kind of been grandfathered in because I've been around forever. And I mean, the difference between a lot of people who make it in this business and don't is not the ideas, it's the ability to communicate their ideas. And I think there's a lot of people right now who are getting really good at communicating their ideas, and they have really good ideas as well. And it's worth watching.
Love it, Bob. We love it. Okay. Our guy, Steve, he is a metalhead. He would kill me if I didn't ask you this question. I don't know anything about, I know a little bit about metal, but I'm more like the Tool kind of stuff. Our boy, Steve, is asking, Bob, non-fantasy question. Who do you prefer as Killswitch Engage vocalist Jesse Leach or Howard Jones?
I'm a Howard Jones guy, but when I saw them, was it right before the pandemic? No, I was a year ago. It was the Killthrax. It was a Killswitch Engaged Anthrax tour. And it was Jesse Leach. And I was pretty impressed, right? I mean, I know he was the original and then Howard came in. I like Howard lately. If you haven't seen him, he does a little short sample of Leonard Skinner's Simple Man that he just does totally Howard things. I'm a real big Howard fan. So it would be that. And so I'm going to go with that, but I'm not against Jesse Leach. I think he's done a fine job, and the new stuff is really good.
Bob, you got guitars back there. Okay, I'm going to sneak one more in there. What are those both the same brand of guitar? Those two different brands?
Two different brands.
Oh, can you play those guitars?
I can play those guitars. Not as good as I can play my drums, but I can play those.
Wow.
There's a Jackson Dinky right there, and an old Ibanez kind of Strat copy with a Floyd Rose tremolo in it. Ooh. That I think I've had this thing for 25 years. I don't think it's ever been out of tune.
Wow.
Awesome, the Jackson, is a little bit of an effort.
Right.
That's awesome. Bob, we really want to thank you for your time. I mean, Matt said it all. Like we look up to you. I pretty much listen to all your shows as much as I can.
That, of course.
Every Saturday, of course, with Dempsey, I'm there. I wish to listen to as much of the Fantasy Dirt Show as possible. Love you. Really appreciate your time. We know you're so busy, and we thank you. So we're honored. So for Mr. Harris,
I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. So for Mr. Harris, for Matt, we are the Flex Network.
Network. This is the Flex Network. Flex on them. Flex on everybody. This right here is the Flex Network. Yeah.